What's up, studs? Canal here, Bulls on Wall Street. Big, nice, juicy pullback the last few days in the United States stock market, with the techs pulling back, a handful of percent here. A much-needed pullback. So let's spend a few minutes talking about the indexes and what's happening tomorrow. We have multiple things. We have Jackson Hole. We have a Friday, which is, obviously options expiration. And, Fridays have been typically a little bit hot in this 2025. So will we get a turnaround Friday? Or, is there something more coming down the pipe? Today I thought was interesting. There were multiple federal Reserve speakers that were like, hey, inflation is perking up. That's not good. Yeah, we already know that. We saw the PPI. So I don't think the inflation moves the market as much as, we think. The market's been running more on this kind of like AI narrative for the most part. That's what's been going down. But to me, and this is a guess, once again, educated guess, we've been waiting for a nice 5-6 day pullback this whole run, right? We've had pullbacks. We had 2-day pullback here, and that's it, right? This is the first good-sized pullback. Not in price, like we had one here, but right, like it orderly, kind of just nice. Put a little fear in some stocks. Some stocks got blown out like Palantir. We needed something like this. I feel like it's setting up for a little bit of a rally now. If the market flushes off or opens weak tomorrow into the Jackson Hole, or during the Jackson Hole, we tap into that 50-day moving average. This thing is, we have to play for the bounce, at least in terms of probabilities. We'll be at the lower Bollinger Band. We'll be oversold. The stochastic's already at 20. Got to try, right? There's other couple green shoots that I thought worth mentioning. So the market's already been fading into the Jackson Hole. So now whatever happens now is more like a sell the news, right? But the other thing I thought was interesting was the IWM had some outperformance today. And, we had this breakout here. And then we just pulled back, retested the breakout spot into the bone zone, up 0.52%, and maybe even a little bit of, drift up in the after hours, right? Not much, but a little bit of drift. So that's something to keep an eye on too. We held support. We held this retest. And if this thing comes out of, range, say we come into this 230s, man, it's game on tomorrow, right? So if Powell, shits on the market, hey, the market may still shit itself, but I think at that 50, the setup is there to come in and try to long this thing. And if we don't, then we just rip under. Hey, we've got another level of support here at 550. We try it again, and if none of that works, then, we can always short. On a day trade basis, you can't swing short down 5-6 days in a row, but we can patrol along. The best thing about being a day trader is you can be wrong, take a small loss, 1%, 2% of your account, maybe 3 or 4, even 5 if you have a bunch of positions, but you can flip it, right? You can flip it, and then you can put the legs out and do it. But I feel like this was a pretty orderly pullback. Yes, it was a little bit of a flushy for a couple days. That's to be expected when so many stocks are up a lot. But it wasn't nasty, like crazy nasty, right? Falling 1.5%, 2%, 1.8%, like this kind of thing is not a crash. Let's see what happens tomorrow. On the SPY, we're just kind of like marinating here. It would have been nicer if this pulled back a little bit more, but the SPY is a little bit meaningless this days, considering that everybody's just, right, loaded to the gills in the queues, and so you're getting exaggerated movements and all sorts of positioning one way to the other. We'll see what's going on, all right? So now, let's dig into the watch list. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. There's a couple things that I'm interested in. Number one, there was some news in the afternoon on rare earths, right? Rare earths. And so you had a little bit of a run in MP. USAR had a nice run end of day, and so they both pulled back a little bit, right? So, we tested this 20 breakout. That wasn't 20, it was a second test, right? But I pulled back to support. We should come in for the third test. Let's see. If it breaks 20, you're hitting 25 really, really quickly. I like it. CRML has been holding up for a few days too. So, you got a whole, host of these things that are looking like they could do it, right? they're looking like they can do it. And, you know, if you look here, like this METC had a decent run into the close. I find this one a little bit harder to trade, so this one I'm not putting on the watch list. USAR MP just trade a lot better, so just kind of keep that in mind. We were messing around with this. Look at this beauty. This PSKY IPO stock, it's been in play because, you know, they came out with a deal, a television deal with the UFC. So you had this big push. Pretty orderly pullback on light volume. You know, you got light volume pullback, 4 days. Love that shit, right? Right into the 9 EMA, and now you're curling into this thing. Man, this feels like it's, you know, about to bust loose. 48 million shares in volume. Dude, the pump is on this thing. That's top of the list right there. XPEV had a really nice day. You know, you had a trend line break here coming out of the wedge, and now you're taking out some, you know, horizontal resistance over here. Actually had decent enough intraday range. A lot of times these Chinese stocks, you know, they gap up and then they just sit there, right? And they're moving on those gaps. But today there was actually some falter. We traded this future in the chat room, opening, really pretty much the opening tick, you know, and just kind of took this spike. I missed this kind of 50-day, you know, 50 EMA drop, but like these things look great. PDD triggered today. Not only triggered, but right, you had a all-day long trend, a slow one, but look, if you look at where it opened, at 6 points, on you know, in a market where like not much is happening, you know, on a day like today where you were just kind of like chopping around in the queues, that's pretty damn good, right? UUU also had, right, the rare earths. It also had a little bit of a remount, you know, so you had the fake break, you know, a breakdown, and then bam, right? So keep an eye on both of those. TEM, man, I got a, you know, love-hate relationship with this thing. So you got a breakout here. I'm going to just pretend. I'm an optimist, all right? I'm going to pretend this little nub, this little micro penis, did not show itself, right? I'm going to pretend this nub doesn't exist, all right? And we're going to pretend like this is a fucking breakout, and this stock owes me. And if it clears out this, man, it's got a chance of rip tits, rip butts, definitely, you know, target to 90, 15 million shares in volume. Why not, baby? OkLO, I've been watching this one too. Nice pullback. You went from 85 to 60. It's a fair pullback right there. Sitting right at the 50-day moving average. BE, great trader lately. A little bit sloppy, but it's getting there. It's just back and filling some of this. It could use one more rest day, but you never know. If the market wants to go tomorrow and the IWM goes, and right, and some of these mid caps go, I guess these are probably even above, you know, IWM, you know, caps, but dude, that's got a good damn look to it. So keep an eye on that one. And look, I got a couple spec names in case, you know, we do get a little speculative favor, right? You got SMAR, breakout, pull back right to the breakout spot. You know, you got an easy location there. The Jobster sitting at the 50-day moving average, right? Nice $6 retracement. And old Tissy. Tissy was a hot little trender, 7 to 31. First test of the 200 in a few months. You know, not I wouldn't say orderly, right? But definitely grinded its way down. And it's holding there. So, you know, if this thing starts to rebound too, I think that could be something. And then I got, you know, all sorts of, you know, little doohickeys. But I do like, you know, PDD, PSKY, right? Future. I think some of these are got some real strength in them. BE. They've got like really, really good charts. I would recommend, on a personal level, I'm speaking to myself, talking to my own book, right? You got these kind of nice names that are setting up. Don't spend too much time circle jerking it with your buddies to Palantir. Is Palantir going to go up? Is Palantir going to go down? Is Palantir going to do this? It's like, I spent a couple days doing that, trying to catch this fucking bounce. And it was like, I was leading the circle jerk. It wasn't that fun, you know? Getting jerked by a bunch of, you know, lonely men living in their mother's basements, talking about Palantir. Not that fun, right? Like, you know, let's go with the hotties with the bodies a little bit. And, you know, if this goes, we'll have chances to get into it. But, look, it's just been a damn tricky trader. Inside day today for the most part. But let's go and have some fun. To me, the rest of the large caps, like, I don't see any of them that look... I don't see any of them that look like that juicy to me. You know, I would... If they're like yeah, they're like they're something, but I don't know what they are. So I think we just move on for a little bit. All right. So I love you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace in the Middle East.